the Meta Life podcast. I'm your host, Laura. Come with me on a journey to a healthy life. On today's episode, Ankita and I talk about the benefits of veganism. Welcome to the podcast, Ankita. Could you please tell us what veganism is? But maybe before we do that, let me introduce you briefly. So Ankita is doing a PhD in animal rights law. She's also the founder and the director of an organization that teaches lawyers how to defend animal rights. So could you tell us what veganism is and what it means?
Hi, thanks for having me here. So to me, veganism is a philosophy. It's a philosophy the followers of which try to minimize their negative impact on non-human animals to the greatest extent they possibly can. Veganism isn't about perfection. It isn't about getting it right 100% of the time in 100% of the situations, but it's more about the intention to do good, to live in a way that doesn't harm others, and to follow through more times than to fail.
Oh, so if you call yourself a vegan, what are you supposed to do and what are you supposed not to do?
So the first thing would be to have the intention and the commitment at a psychological level to reduce harming animals, non-human animals all around you in all the choices that you make. So it isn't just about your diet, but it's about your lifestyle more generally. It's about what you eat, what you wear, what you wash your face with, what you wash your clothes with. It's everything. Everything, because I think a lot of people don't realize the extent to which our actions are capable of harming animals. There are products that are tested on them, products that are made from them, products that are produced using their minds, bodies, and labor. And for all of these reasons, to be a vegan would be to try to reduce the harm that is caused to animals by using products and services that don't exploit animals to come to us.
Okay, so a few questions so that our listeners understand properly. If you're vegan, what can't you eat and what can you eat?
So if you're vegan, you can't eat anything that has come about through the exploitation of animals. 9 times out of 10, this would involve eating plant-based foods. However, this isn't a hard and fast rule, and I can give an example to try and demonstrate. So most animal food comes from animals who are exploited. A lot of us know this. That is why veganism is often seen as being synonymous with being plant-based in your diet. But I can give an example that a friend told me about a few years ago when I was visiting India. And he said in this particular region, for the longest time, traditionally, it was more humane, more animal-friendly to actually eat dairy products than it was to eat grains. And that's because grains were produced using animal labor, and the animals used for that labor were treated far more harshly than the cows that were used for dairy production.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is because I want to encourage people to question, to not just look at a label and say, oh, this is derived from an animal, therefore it is definitely worse than something that is derived from plants, because while usually is the case, definitely in the industrialized regions of the global north, it is almost certainly going to be the case, but it isn't necessarily so depending on the model of production that a region follows, depending on the industrial infrastructure that is available.
Yeah. So here we are in Switzerland. So as a European, I could take the approach that if I want to have a vegan diet, I would avoid meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, and probably also honey. And that's correct from the dietary point of view. And it's probably certain that in that way we are not harming animals when eating a plant-based diet in Europe. Is that more or less correct?
That's more or less correct. And I think not just for Europe, but these days it's more or less correct for most parts of the world that have industrial sector.
So from a lifestyle perspective, it also means not using wool, for example, or silk or leather. But what if you already own these things? Do you throw them away? Can you buy it secondhand? Is it bad? What about leather that is being used because the meat was used in the food industry before? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so my personal thoughts, and I guess it is obvious, but I should say this. I, of course, don't speak for all vegans everywhere. People have different ways of interpreting the philosophy. But my personal thoughts, if you already own something, throwing it away is a terrible waste.
I agree.
Means that the animal from whom that product has been made has died partly in vain because that product was thrown out. So I have the same view to food produced with animals. If it already exists, it's a shame to throw it away. It's a waste to throw it away. Find something to do with it. Feed it back to the animal, feed it to a human being, or give it to a human being who will use it, thereby reducing the demand that they would otherwise place for such an item or such a product. Even though, of course, in a strict sense, animals' bodies and the things made from them shouldn't be seen as products, but philosophy aside. So definitely against throwing out animal products or throwing out any kind of product, whether it would still be vegan to say use the remains of an animal who has been killed for other purposes and these are leftovers. So my personal take on this is, does your purchase, if you want to purchase a leather product that is a byproduct of some other industry, does it sustain that industry? So when it comes to gelatin, for instance, I personally don't see a problem because the value that it actually gives back to the industry is so marginal that cows and other animals, pigs, will never be bred and raised and killed just to procure gelatin. It is a byproduct or a waste product, depending on how much value it actually puts back into the industry. So that would be the metric that I would use, whether it can sustain the industry, whether it makes a significant contribution to it. And if it doesn't, then I don't have a problem with it. And if it does, then I would avoid it.
Amazing. So now that we all understand what veganism is and isn't, can we talk about the benefits of having a vegan diet and having a vegan lifestyle?
Absolutely. So, we all know the harms that a non-vegan lifestyle has on animals. They are the victims whose labor, whose bodies, whose body parts, bodily secretions, whatever, are used to produce non-vegan products that are then consumed by people or by people's companion animals or whatever. So we know the impact on animals. What I want to focus on today, given the theme of this podcast, is the impact on human health, the environment, and food availability. So first, two aspects I wanted to focus on was antimicrobial resistance, basically the creation of superbugs, and zoonotic diseases that affect humans that originate in animals. And before I proceed, I also want to clarify that I'm not an expert on any of these topics. However, I'm a researcher in law. However, I do this kind of research as part of my outreach activities, wherein I take my animal rights research and try to make it accessible to people beyond the realm of law. I do associated research into how issues of animal rights interact with things like human health, with the environment, with food availability. So that's where this is coming from. And we've got the sources for all of these. I won't have time to go into them in detail, so I will just...
We'll make sure that the sources that you're citing are available to our listeners on the description.
Perfect. So we've got antimicrobial resistance and zoonotic diseases. Millions of deaths a year and 1 billion illnesses a year are attributable to zoonosis. 75% of new pathogens detected in the past 30 years, 75% of emerging infectious diseases, and 60% of infectious diseases are attributable to originate in animals. On average, according to the United Nations Environment Program, a new infectious disease emerges every 4 months in humans. These are statistics from the World Health Organization and the United Nations Environment Program, demonstrating just how harmful it is for us to be reliant on animal agriculture, how harmful it is to our health to be reliant on animal agriculture. Because how this works per my understanding, is that these diseases essentially jump from animal species to humans, using human-animal interaction and things like agriculture as the bridge through which they make their job.
This is exactly what happened with the coronavirus, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it does impact us on a day-to-day basis, and it doesn't impact only a very few. It impacts everyone, as the COVID did for us.
Yes, and it doesn't just impact the people who actually consume animals, but it impacts us as a society.
Yeah.
Because the corona pandemic took down not only people who were associated with animals in their husbandry or in consuming their products, but also people who had absolutely nothing to do with it. Because because diseases don't discriminate that way. Once their zoonotic diseases have reached the human species, we are all at risk.
Yeah.
And then there's also impact on individual health conditions. So various independent organizations have found causal links between the consumption of animal products such as meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, and serious and even fatal human health conditions such as Alzheimer's, cancer of the bowel, breast, ovary, lung, prostate, stomach, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurotoxicity, osteoporosis, and many more. So this is the American Cancer Society, the Cancer Council, Cancer Research UK, German Cancer Research Centre, International Agency for Cancer Research, National Cancer Institute, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, World Cancer Research Fund, and the World Health Organization. So
basically, everyone agrees consumption of animal products do contribute to the development of disease such as cancer, heart disease, and a multitude of other very deadly diseases that most of us, our relatives, are currently dying from.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so adopting a plant-based diet, which is a synonym to a vegan diet, reduces the probability of us humans developing these diseases. Is that correct?
In my understanding, absolutely. And all the research that I read seems to suggest so. So Chinese-style salted fish and processed meat have been classed as group 1 carcinogenics, which means that their links with cancer have been as conclusively established as for tobacco or asbestos.
Yeah.
They also have established links to colorectal cancer and possible links to stomach and bowel cancers. Red meat is classed as a group 2A carcinogenic, which means that it has probable links to cancer, probable to colorectal, and possible to stomach and bowel cancers. And these are various studies conducted by the IARC and the WHO. The World Health Organization has found that the risk of developing these cancers actually increases with the amount of meat that's consumed, although there isn't any specific data to permit a conclusion on whether there is such a thing as a safe level that you can actually consume of these products, of these animal-based products.
Yeah. And from an ecological perspective, are there any benefits to eating more plant-based food or to adopting a vegan diet?
Yes, absolutely. There absolutely are, but I would like to say 2 quick things.
Yes, of course.
If I can. Thank you so much. So blue zones. Blue zones are regions where residents live on average the longest and healthiest lives, and studies conducted by various sources, including National Geographic, have found that the diets of people who live in these blue zones are primarily, if not exclusively, plant-based. That's 95 to 100%. And the China study, also known as the most comprehensive study of nutrition ever conducted, has concluded that whole food, plant-based diets are overall better for human health.
Yeah. And on the ecological perspective of a vegan diet, how does our choice we make every day in our plate impact our ecology?
This is one of the most startling, the area with some of the most startling statistics. So, the United Nations Environment Program found that the destructive impact of animal agriculture on our environment exceeds that of any other technology on Earth.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is eating animal product is more pollutant than transport, for example, even aircraft. It's more pollutant than other industries. So it's the number 1 contributor to world pollution. Is that correct?
It is more polluting, and it is definitely the from what I've read, the number one contributor to global warming and greenhouse gas emissions and all of that. So yes,
okay,
absolutely.
And I have a question that I've been asked a few times. So, is factory meat less or more polluting than grass-fed, free-range meat?
Depends on the type of meat we're looking at.
No, if we compare, for example, a cow to a cow.
Oh yes, okay. But again, it depends on whether you're comparing. So cow to a cow, yes, but it's different in the case of a cow than it is in the case of a pig than it is in the case of a chicken.
Can you tell us about the ecological impact
Yes.
the consumption of meat has?
Yes, let's go. So the greenhouse gas footprint of animal agriculture, according again to the UNEP, rivals that of every car, truck, bus, ship, airplane, and rocket ship combined.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
According to the Cowspiracy website, and it's a fantastic website, they've put together excellent statistics drawing on a lot of research. So according to that, animal agriculture is actually the leading cause of species extinction, ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction.
That is very crazy. So, if you had to choose between eating a vegan diet most of the time and trying to reduce your consumption of plastic most of the time, which one is better for the environment?
Probably for most people in most cases it would be to eat the vegan diet most of the time than reducing the plastic intake most of the time. But
okay, so
depends on again how much plastic you're consuming and things like that. But overall the going vegan thing is, when in doubt, go vegan.
And is it, so if I want to have a very positive impact or the least harmful impact on the ecology as possible, is it better to focus on your vegan diet, or is it better to focus on public transports exclusively or not traveling by airship at all?
Again, slightly dependent on how much you travel, but generally go with adopting the vegan diet, as it's, for most people in most parts of the world, in most cases, the most impactful thing they can do to reduce their ecological footprint.
Wonderful. So if I summarize our discussion, adopting a vegan diet is better, obviously, for the animals because no one is being killed or tortured. It's better for our health because it reduces our chances of having cancer, heart disease, and other terrible diseases that we can die of. And it's better for the environment because because animal agriculture has the biggest polluting effect on Earth. Is that a good summary of why we should be vegans?
That is an excellent summary. And before we end this, I'd also like to mention one statistic that seems to alarm people every time I mention it. And I also got this from the website of Cowspiracy. So 82% of starving human children live in countries where food is fed to animals that are eaten by Western countries.
Wow. This is absolutely
indeed.
Shocking. Okay. So, I guess what we can tell our listeners is go vegan for one meal a week, and if you like it, go vegan for 1 day a week, and if you like it, go vegan for 6 days a week, and if you like it, go vegan for a year, and if you still like it, go vegan for your life. Is that correct?
That is correct. 100%.
Fabulous. It has been incredible talking to you, Ankita. And before we end this episode, I have a few burning questions for you. Are you ready for them?
Let's go.
Okay, so the first burning question is, what do you want most out of life?
I want to help make the world a better place.
Yes, I love this. And complete these sentences. The world needs more
vegans.
Yes, even bad vegans who accidentally or occasionally eat chicken or eat fish. It's better to have a ton of bad vegans than a few handful of perfect vegans.
We need all the vegans we can get. All kinds of vegans. Just all of you. Everybody come over to our side. We will take you.
Okay. And complete this other sentence. I am grateful for
vegans.
Yes. And if there was one thing I could cook for you, Ankita, what would it be?
Your kale chips.
Done.
Kale chips.
Kale chips it is.
Kale chips it is. Let's go.
Ankita, I appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you for being so generous with your time. To our listeners, I hope you pass down this episode to anyone in your life who may need it. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for all the good work you do, Laura. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.